Hey guys, back again with another video. Sorry it's been a long time. It's just been so busy. It's been so hard to actually sit down and get a video done. And I've actually finished this game like weeks ago. In fact, I got the platinum for it even. But I had to do a review on it. I'd been looking forward to this game for a long time. Was really excited for it. That, of course, is Resident Evil 2, the remake here. And I played the original game for the first time not too long ago. In fact, you can check out my video I did on the channel. I kind of went through like a old school Resident Evil marathon, and it really opened my eyes to the old school survival horror games. It's a type of game I wasn't really into as a kid. I think they were a little too difficult for me, and tank controls were a hard thing for me to get over. Now, though, I actually kind of appreciate tank controls. It's kind of crazy. And I really loved going through all those old Resident Evil games. I played the first one, the remake of the first one, uh, like way back. I think I have a review of it on the channel as well, and I really enjoyed that. But I didn't play with tank controls on that one. I played with like the more modern controls, which is kind of weird because it actually controls far worse when you combine the regular controls with the fixed camera angles. It actually doesn't make much sense. So I don't know why I played that game like that, but I played through Resident Evil 2, 3, Code Veronica, a bit of Zero. I didn't talk about that one. I think I just got burnt out on the series, and honestly, I don't think I like Resident Evil Zero that much, but maybe another time I'll talk about that. But Resident Evil 2 was my favorite of all the old school Resident Evil games. It's my second favorite Resident Evil game after the fourth one. I absolutely enjoyed, like, really enjoyed that one. So to find out that they were going to do a remake, I was pretty interested. I had some reservations because, I think it's something that they could easily fuck up. But Resident Evil 7 was a really good game. They went back to like the roots of the series. I think Resident Evil 7 was a bit too scripted for my tastes in a lot of parts. And I don't know, it had definitely survival aspects, but eventually you got way too much ammo towards the end of the game, and it started to feel more like an action game. They threw like tons of enemies at you. The ship part I thought was just really tedious. Like, Resident Evil 7 had its moments. Like, I enjoyed the game overall. I don't think I've talked about Resident Evil 7, honestly. Maybe I did a review. I can't even remember at this point, but it was a decent game, but at least it brought back the inventory management. I also don't think first person worked that well. I think, probably prefer the third person in this one, and then just like the fixed camera angles and pre-rendered backgrounds of the old school games. But at least they brought back, so like the first half of Resident Evil 7 I thought was actually pretty good. Exploring like just one singular environment, and there's backtracking, and the environment's kind of interconnected. You're, solving like slight puzzles. So it was cool that they kind of brought back the survival horror. And Resident Evil 2, this remake, goes further into that direction. I think it's far more of a survival horror game than Resident Evil 7 is. This time around, you do actually have to keep track of ammo, and you're going to be running out of ammo pretty consistently. And it's not one of those things where at the end of the game you're going to have a shit ton of ammo. It depends on how you play, I guess. You can save a lot of the gunpowder items and like create like a shit ton of like acid rounds or whatever for some of the end bosses, but you kind of have to do that because this game even takes the boss battle approach the old games have. But I guess we should get into that a little bit later. But before I get into the review here, overall, what did I think of it? Loved it. Absolutely loved it. This is this game is getting a lot of like critical praise, and deservedly so. I think this is the best Resident Evil game since Resident Evil 4. And if I had to rank the series, I think this is up there. Honestly, I have to play Resident Evil 4 again. Maybe I don't like that game as much as I used to. I thought it was a revolutionary, like, amazing game when it first came out. Maybe it doesn't hold up so well, but I kind of doubt that. I'm pretty sure that game is still pretty fucking great. It is an action game, though. That Resident Evil 4 was kind of a turning point for the series where it kind of abandoned survival horror and went more into an action direction. But it still had a lot of good horror to it, Resident Evil 4. But for me, this is up there with Resident Evil 4, and then as far as comparing it to the original Resident Evil 2, it's interesting. I don't think this is a definitive version of the game in the way that the GameCube remake of 1 is. I think the original game does have its strengths. I think the tank controls and fixed camera angles give that game some positive aspects, and I don't know. There's definitely some design elements I prefer in the first one. I think there's something to be said about the atmosphere in the first game, and I think overall maybe I prefer like the slight campiness of the original and what they do with the story and writing. in the original, even though it's probably a lot better handled in this game, and the voice acting's a lot better in the remake. But I don't know. I think they're both well worth playing, the original and the remake. I don't think I wouldn't tell people, oh, don't bother with the original because the remake is so good. It's cool to actually play the both of them and then see kind of the differences. I think they're different enough that they both kind of stand on their own, which is cool. That's to me an amazing remake where it changes enough things to feel modern, but stays true to the original in a lot of ways. Where it's like this really enjoyable game, yet it doesn't take away from the original in any way. It doesn't like make it like obsolete. Like there's definitely cool differences between the two of them. Whereas like that Resident Evil GameCube remake, like that is the definitive version of the game. I would never go back to the original. I think it's just like heaps and bounds better, unless you like love like campy voice acting or whatever in the first game. But we'll talk about I guess the story first in this one, getting into the actual review. Very similar to the original game. They didn't change much. I think a lot of like the notes that you find throughout the police station are kind of different. But if you haven't played the original, you've still got their two characters, Leon and Claire, and they have their different routes. It's even still kind of got the zapping system, sort of. It plays it a little differently in this one. The paths don't really interconnect or anything. So when you start up the game, you either choose Leon or Claire, and that's your A route. And then you get like a certain ending, and then after that you can do a new scenario. In this game they call it like a new run or new scenario, and that's your B path with either Leon or Claire. And it kind of changes up the first like roughly half of the game. It kind of changes up item locations, key item locations, where you start. So the way you go throughout the police station is a little different, but the second half of the B route is very similar to the A route, and that's I think a little disappointing. I was expecting a little bit more. The Claire and Leon routes are quite a bit different. Basically, you're getting different items, you're meeting different characters, like in the first game, or in the original game, which it was good. So those A routes are pretty different from one another. B routes not as much. B routes a lot more difficult. They throw tougher enemies at you a lot quicker, so enemy placements are a little different. So it's definitely cool to do a B route immediately after the A, just to see the difference, and then also you're playing a different character with that B route. But you can kind of play through the game 4 times. You can kind of go like Leon A, Claire B, and then Claire A, Leon B. That's what I did. But going through that, you kind of realize that the B route is actually not that much different. So I don't know. If you just want to kind of play the game through and don't want to like do constant playthroughs of it, I think just an A route followed by a B route is fine. You're gonna get the full story there. You're gonna get the true ending. And it's pretty similar. So basically, the outbreak has kind of already happened in Raccoon City following the events of the first game. And Leon Kennedy's he's a cop, his first day on the job, so he comes to Raccoon City and of course finds out there's zombies everywhere, and he meets up with Claire, who's basically her brother is Chris Redfield from the original Resident Evil, and she's trying to find him in Raccoon City. They eventually meet up, and then it becomes kind of like an escape story, like escaping the city. And so it's a pretty simplistic storyline, but eventually through the end, I'm not spoiling anything, but you kind of discover like exactly how this outbreak started. And through like different locations you visit later, and that's actually my favorite part of the story. These later characters that you meet towards the end, and kind of figuring out how that outbreak started. I think that's the part of the game I like. I've always liked. I mean, it's tough. I can't really say too much here. I don't want to spoil things, but I mean, I feel like most people probably played Resident Evil 2 at this point, but maybe you're starting fresh with this remake. So in that instance, I don't really want to spoil like the antagonist character, for instance, and some of the later characters. So, you know, I don't want to spoil things, but it's very similar to the first game. Maybe a little less campy. They've changed some of the characters a little bit, or at least I don't know. It's weird. What they did with the gun shop owner, for instance, is you know what? I kind of like it. They made him a little more sympathetic, I guess, and you feel more empathy for him. He's not like this just goofy character with this Canadian accent anymore. They actually give him a bit of character. Marvin in the police station, they give him a bit more character, which is cool. There's a few cutscenes along the way, but for the most part, it's not a very intrusive game. Like with the original, a lot of the story and backstory you're getting by reading notes throughout the police station. and the cutscenes are very brief, which I think works for like a survival horror game. So honestly, as far as Resident Evil goes, I think the storyline has gotten really convoluted over the years, but this is back when it wasn't there yet. And I think the old Resident Evil games actually do have some decent writing to them. And it's no different with this. Some of the writing can be a little bit goofy, and the voice acting is a lot better than the original game, but it's still not like amazing or anything like that. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of like the story in Resident Evil 2. It's not like amazing or anything, but it's good enough to kind of get you through. I will say they didn't really drastically change too much with this compared to the original game, which I think was probably the right move. So basically, I guess moving on to the gameplay part of the game, which is this is the main part of the game, and where it's really where the game is fucking awesome. So it's like it takes a lot from Resident Evil 7, I think. The UI is very similar. The way the map works is very similar, and the inventory system is very similar as well. Where one of the things I really like about this game is the map system, I should say. So it plays very similar to your old school horror survival horror games, the old school Resident Evil games. Basically, you're exploring this police station. You're kind of finding key items, solving minor puzzles to kind of get your way through the police station, and it all kind of interconnects. There's a decent amount of backtracking that you have to do. Obviously, fighting zombies along the way and finding ammo and scrounging for ammo and kind of, surviving and making sure you don't get killed because you die really fast in this game, which a good design decision like with the original game. And eventually it's not just the police station, you do find other environments, and that's where the game, I feel, can drag a little bit. This is not really a spoiler, but the sewer section, I think, is a little, I don't know, I didn't like it in the original game that much, but it was shorter there. It was very brief. But in this game, it's kind of maze-like, especially when you haven't memorized it yet. They expanded it compared to the original game, and I think there's some really tedious aspects of it. And then there's one certain hallway in it that just gives me anxiety every time I play through the game. I've beaten this game like 7 times now. Of course, going for the platinum. And oh man, the one hallway in the sewers, you might know what I'm talking about with these certain enemies, is just brutal. Every time I go through it, I just get so anxious. So that's probably a good thing, actually. But I don't know, the sewers, there's a lot of like annoying puzzles in it. There's like this chess piece puzzle that I really hate, especially on repeat playthroughs. But the police station, I think, is probably the highlight of the game. I think the game does get a little bit weaker in its back half. I don't know. Although they did do a good job with the last location compared to the original game, I actually kind of like it. It's pretty threatening. There's a lot of crazy stuff that happens in that last section. A lot of well-designed parts to it that I don't really want to spoil. But the police station is just as good as it is in the original game. It's maybe not as well designed as the Spencer Mansion, but you have to, like, the Spencer Mansion is like, that's the entire game. So I think they put more kind of effort into that, or at least it's most of the game. So this game is like I feel like this game is far more successful at giving that survival horror feeling than Resident Evil 7. There really is limited ammo in this game, and now, I guess one of the things I wanted to talk about, like one of the strengths of this game, I think, especially when you're playing on like a higher difficulty level, is a lot of like the little minor choices that you're constantly thinking about, especially with your lack of inventory space. Often when you're playing this game, it's always a question of, oh, what could I possibly discard here? If you're feeling like it might be a long trek to the next save point, and you could possibly die and lose a different like a certain amount of progress. It's what key items do I really need to take? Where should I go from here? What route should I take? What would be the safest route? What weapon should I bring with me? How much ammo do I think I might need? Maybe for an upcoming boss or a certain room or some enemies that are coming up. Is a board going to be useful here? Should I pick that up? What kind of herbs do I want to take with me? What kind of herbs do I want to use at the moment? There's all these different choices with the inventory that you have and what route you want to take, and the kind of choices that are going to basically ensure your survival. And I think that's really one of the strengths of the old Resident Evil games. And it's a strength with this game, and it's something that this game carries over from the original Resident Evil 2. that I really appreciate, and that combined with like just the genuine like awesome level design to the game, it creates this really satisfying experience, and the exploration is just top notch. I think one of the things people don't really talk about too much that I think is a really big success with this series, especially the older games, is that level of exploration mixed with the survival elements, which I think is really awesome. Now, the combat in this game is not like the greatest. You don't have a ton of movement options. I think there's like a quick turn you can do, but there's no kind of dodge or anything like that. The character movement is fairly slow. The aiming doesn't feel like amazing or anything like that. And you still definitely want to go for headshots. There's an auto aim that you can turn on, or not an auto aim, like an aim assist that you can turn on. I would turn that off. Don't turn that on. It makes the game too easy. They automatically enable it on the easy mode, for instance. I think that kind of ruins things a little bit. So yeah, the combat doesn't like feel amazing or anything like that. But I think it works for this type of game and the kind of experience that they were going for. It can be a little frustrating with some of the boss fights. The boss fights in this game, like with a lot of the original games, tend to be more of like an ammo test, like a test to see if you've been carrying enough ammo up until that point, because they're pretty spongy. And that's one of the actually things I wanted to talk about with this game in general is the damage sponge enemies, which I'm seeing it as like a common criticism for the game. The bosses on normal mode aren't too bad. On hardcore mode, I think they are a little over the top. There's one boss, the end boss for Claire's route, I think is absolutely fucking ridiculous on hardcore mode. Like, I was actually incredibly well prepared for it, and it still didn't have enough ammo, really, to properly take the boss down. I had to resort to, like, a kind of a dirty tactic to actually take it down. But, yeah, the boss fights aren't anything amazing. A lot of it is just kind of, like, running around these small areas, kind of trying to dodge their attacks, sort of, and then hitting their weak points. There's one boss that I think is kind of interesting. There's an interesting environmental thing that you can do with it. But yeah, the bosses are generally fairly simple with their patterns, and it's just basically unloading as much power ammo as you possibly can into them. So yeah, that's a kind of another carryover actually from the old Resident Evil games, which I've never found to have that great of boss fights. But I've never found like there's that much of like an important part of the game. But damage sponges, I do want to talk about. On standard and especially hardcore, I feel this game's kind of weird where the zombies seem to have a random amount of hit points to them before they go down. And from what I've heard, this game actually has an adaptive difficulty of sorts that I don't think Capcom's really talked about. And people would have to do tests, I think, to see if it actually really exists. Where people are kind of saying that the better you do at this game, the more hits zombies are going to take, and then so basically the second half of the game, in a lot of instances, you're going to find that the zombies take way too many hits to kill. So most of the time it's fine, and I feel like they give just enough ammo that it doesn't feel like it's too annoying. And I feel like this is where kind of a lot of the difficulty of this game comes from. If every zombie died really quickly, especially if you headshotted them and things like that, this game would be too easy. The difficulty would be completely neutered, I think. So it's kind of one of the things they've done to kind of, I don't know, make things a little tougher. And it does create some hilarious moments. Like, I've had situations where I've, like, shot a zombie in the head, like, 40 times. Like, 40 pistol bullets. And they still don't die. They get to the ground, and then a lot of zombies will like kind of trick you too. They'll be on the ground, and you'll think that they're dead. But if you don't like use a knife or a gun to finish them off when you're on the ground, they'll just get back up again. And they can actually get downed again for a second time, and then they can get back up again. It's kind of crazy, like how many bullets some of these zombies take. So the other thing with that is I think really you're supposed to be running away from a lot of zombies in this. You're not actually supposed to encounter, and kill every zombie in the game. And in fact, on standard and hardcore mode, I don't even think it's actually possible with the amount of ammo that they give you. Because ammo doesn't drop from enemies in this game. You only find it in the environments. So, yeah, I don't know. It's one of those weird things where I can get why people are frustrated by it. And sometimes I was kind of annoyed by it. But I think for the most part, it kind of works for this game with like the amount of ammo they give you, and to kind of create that survival, the survival horror feeling of the original games. But yeah, it's definitely probably one of the parts of the game that I'm kind of like a little iffier on. As far as other gameplay things go, I mean, the other thing I probably want to mention is the puzzles. The original Resident Evil 2 was pretty simplistic with its puzzles, especially compared to the original game. They got rid of a lot of those like old school adventure game type puzzles. This game, the puzzles are a little more involved. For the most part, I actually really enjoyed them here. There's some carryovers from the original game, but a lot of them are new. And the B scenario has different puzzle solutions as well for these same puzzles, essentially. But there's a couple of annoying ones. The chess piece puzzle I thought was kind of annoying. I feel like I've talked about this before already, but there's like also the most annoying puzzle is that liquid. What was it like a? You have like test tubes, and you're kind of like transferring liquid from one tube to another. That puzzle was really fucking annoying. I thought it was really obnoxious and reminded me a little bit of one that was in Resident Evil 3 that I really hated. But yeah, the puzzles are fairly minor. They're just kind of like kind of things that you need key items for to kind of like progress you through the police station and some of the later areas. Okay, so we have to talk about the one last thing with the gameplay, Mr. X. I've got to talk about Mr. X now. Some people might consider this spoilers, but honestly, all of the gameplay footage they've shown for this game, all the reviews, they've kind of already talked about it. If you've played the original Resident Evil 2, you know about Mr. X, or Tyrant, as he's called. Now, in the original game, he only showed up in the B route, and he didn't show up that often. It was kind of one of those things where they really took that idea and ran with it with Resident Evil 3 and Nemesis. But in this one, in the remake, he's out in full force. He's in the A route, the B route, and he'll chase throughout the entire police station. And a lot of rooms that you think are safe aren't actually safe from this guy. And so, like in the original Resident Evil 2, it's this really intimidating foe that you can't actually kill. You can down him if you put enough ammo into him, but it's never worth doing that. So he'll basically chase you around around the environment as you're trying to like do puzzles and kind of survive against all the other zombies that are throughout the game, and it adds a lot of tension to the game. Now I've seen a lot of people like react kind of negatively to it and find it kind of annoying that you're trying to explore these environments while you're constantly chased by this threat. You know what? I kind of disagree. I think it adds a lot of tension, and some of my favorite moments in this game are because of Mr. X. For instance, there's like a clock tower section where you gotta solve a puzzle essentially, sort of, to get access to this clock tower. And while you're doing this kind of, you're kind of like, this is not really a spoiler. You're like pushing shelves, and Mr. X kind of chase you as you're doing this, and every run through of this game I've played through this game multiple times, he's always chasing you at that part, and it's always tense. I'm always like, and this is where playing with headphones in this game is fantastic, because you can always hear his footsteps, and when he's like walking throughout the building, so you can tell when he's around, and it's so fucking tense. You're just like, oh shit, I gotta do this fast, and it really makes you kind of memorize the environments and kind of figure out better routes. When he's chasing you, you're kind of like thinking to yourself, okay, what do I want to do here to avoid him? What room will I be able to kind of get around him easily? What rooms do I want to avoid because they have zombies from earlier that I didn't kill? I don't know, it was always tense for me, and there were so many moments where he would just come out of nowhere. I would just enter a room and he was just like, he's just immediately standing there. Or I'm just running through a corridor and he just fucking punches me out of nowhere. I'm just like, oh fuck. Like, it's some of the most genuinely like tense moments came from this guy. I was never annoyed by it. I was always kind of like enthralled by him in the game. I think it was a really smart design decision, and his AI works in some very interesting ways. It can be a little weird sometimes because there are actually certain rooms that he can't come in or go in, and it's a bit weird watching his AI. You can actually kind of like trick his AI in a certain ways, but I don't know. I think he's very intimidating and just a really cool element to the game that I actually really appreciated. But yeah, that's about it for gameplay. It's got a lot of replay value, I find. Like with a lot of the older Resident Evil games, it's very cool to actually speedrun this game. If you're going for the Platinum Trophy, you actually do have to clear the game in less than 3 hours and 30 minutes on the A route. And it was really fun, actually, because the more I played this game, the more I learned the game and the better I got at it. And I was able to I was able to beat the game in like less than 3 hours, almost less than 2 hours. And it's a really satisfying feeling when you can finally do that. Now, I guess actually one of the other things I want to say with like the difficulty levels, there is a hardcore mode where you can actually have it so that you need ink ribbons to save your game, like with the original. I almost kind of wish it was in the standard mode, or you at least had an option for it, because hardcore mode I don't find that enjoyable. I think everything just takes way too many hits to kill for it to be totally enjoyable. I feel like standard is kind of like the best difficulty to play on, but I actually really like the ink ribbons from the previous games. I think it adds some tension, even though they always seem to give you enough. Like, even on hardcore mode, you're never really in danger of running out, but it still adds that element of strategy to the game. You're always thinking about, like, how much progress do I want to make before I should save the game. Which is always a cool element to the game. It's something I really liked about the older games. So it's cool to see it come back in some form. When you do beat the game too, there's a couple of extra scenarios. There's the third, what was it called? The third survivor mode, I think. It's the hunk mode. I think this was in the original Resident Evil 2, where you play as he's not a helicopter pilot, but he's this soldier that's trying to get to a helicopter for extraction. Really fucking hard. It took me like multiple tries to do it, where you have like limited weapons and ammo and health, and there's none of it in the environment, and you're trying to get from point A to point B, and they throw everything at you. And towards the end, it's just absolutely insane, like the enemies they throw at you. I found it kind of frustrating because it was a little bit trial and error, kind of figuring out the right pathing to avoid getting hit by zombies. Which, that's another thing. Zombies are far more aggressive in this game than any Resident Evil game. They have like extremely long reach and can grab you so easily. They do so much damage to you in this game too. It's kind of crazy. But the hunk mode I'm not crazy about. I don't think it's that fun. I don't think it's really Resident Evil to me. It does almost kind of feel like Resident Evil 4 or 5 in a way, but mechanically maybe not as satisfying as those games. Just a little bit more frustrating. When you beat that, there's the tofu mode. I think it's the same section of the game, but you play as Tofu. He was in the original Resident Evil 2 as well, but you only have a knife. And that seems fucking impossible. I don't know how anyone even does that kind of shit, but it's there if you want that. There's free DLC being added to this game as well, so, like, yeah, the game's short for a first playthrough if you're doing, like, both routes, but there's so much replay value to the game, and I think it's definitely worth the full retail price. And it's so far, I mean, I haven't played many games this year, but it's definitely my game of the year so far. I mean, the gameplay in this game is just superb. Visually, it's amazing. Like, man, like, just the atmosphere is just incredible. And they did such a great job, like, recreating these environments in 3D. Those old classic pre-rendered backgrounds, and they've changed enough things, too, as well. The character models are all fantastic. The enemy designs are just disgusting. The gore is just, like, over the top in this game. And I think it's really well done. I really like, actually, how over the top the gore is. It's just a beautiful game. The engine's really nice. It runs really well. There's no frame rate drops of any kind that I noticed throughout my entire, like, 7 playthroughs or however many times I played the game. It's just a gorgeous game. And I played the Devil May Cry 5, and it looks amazing too. Like, Capcom is really putting out some like amazing looking games, I gotta say. But audio, this is where one of my major complaints comes in, actually. Now, the sound design in this game is incredible. I mentioned it before. With headphones, it's absolutely amazing. It's just it's an experience, especially like those Mr. X footsteps, just like the I don't know, like the enemy sounds and things like that. It's just really strong audio design that really adds to like the horror of the game. The soundtrack, I'm a little more let down by. Now, the original soundtrack for this game, the soundtrack for the original Resident Evil 2 is phenomenal. I absolutely love it. It's so atmospheric. The song that plays in the sewers, that song that plays when you first arrive at the police station, the main lobby. It's so moody and so excellent at creating that atmosphere, and there's like really, I don't know, every song is just really moody and just fits the atmosphere of the game so much, and they're very memorable. They're the kind of songs that stick with you. And one of the awesome things with this game, if you got the deluxe edition, is that you can play the game with the original soundtrack. And so I did that for my first couple playthroughs, and it really reminded me of how amazing that original soundtrack is. And it actually added a lot to this game, I thought. So then I decided, okay, let's go with the original soundtrack and see how different it is. And what a bummer! It's pretty much all ambient like soundtrack. It's like an ambient soundtrack. Like there's hardly any actual music in this game. If you're going with the remake soundtrack. Later in the game, there's a couple good tracks, especially when you're fighting bosses and things like that. But there's just nothing memorable here, and it feels so quiet and dead with this original new soundtrack. And the songs that are in the game are just really dull and just don't add anything to the game. It's I don't know. It definitely was a bummer, but at least you can actually put the original soundtrack if you bought the deluxe edition. If you didn't buy the deluxe edition, it actually sucks. Because yeah, it's probably my biggest complaint with the game, to be honest. I think the soundtrack is just extremely lackluster. Even the save room music is just like not good, which kind of sucks. Like Resident Evil 7, I wasn't crazy about the music, but at least the save room music in that game was good. But yeah, kind of underwhelming. But anyways, guys, I think that's it. I think I've talked about this game enough. Just a really fucking awesome game. I was extremely happy with it. It lived up to all my expectations. Really, there was very little to complain about for me. I think going for the Platinum Trophy, the game ended up being a little bit more frustrating than I wanted it to be. It's, again, one of those games where the going for the Platinum Trophy, it kind of burns you out. The Platinum Trophy in this game requires way too many playthroughs. So I kind of did get burnt out. But if I'm kind of like pushing those thoughts away, because I really do feel it can be a little unfair judging the game after going for a Platinum Trophy, because it makes you interact with the game in a way that most people just don't, and it burns you out on a game that you end up really enjoying. So I have to kind of like break away from that and look at the whole experience as a whole, and based on my first couple of playthroughs, because that's when the game was most enjoyable. And it's an amazing game. It's absolutely fucking incredible. My favorite Resident Evil game since the fourth one. Play it. I mean, honestly, I think almost anyone needs to play this game, unless you just don't like horror games at all, where you find them just too hard to get into. But yeah, no, this is easily so far one of the best games of the year, and it's going to be tough for anything in the future to kind of top this for me. Capcom's just, man, Capcom is just fucking killing it lately. It's crazy. This Mega Man 11 was an amazing return to form. Devil May Cry 5, based on the demo, is shaping up really nice. Monster Hunter World, I still play constantly. And that was my all-time, like, my favorite game of last year, and it's actually already one of my favorite games of all time. Man, like, no, Capcom is just, man, they're on fire lately. But that's it, guys. Did you play Resident Evil 2? What did you think of it? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Somebody's watching me.